and we discussed the different parts of did we discuss the human respiratory parts?
Yeah.
Hmm. We saw how different organisms, they have different kind of respiratory organs, and majorly the respiratory organs, it depends upon the habitat that they live in, whether they live on land or whether they live in the water. So today we're going to move forward and we're going to see how the whole entire respiratory pathway has different functions. Now, in the previous class, we saw that the alveoli is the site of exchange of gases, right? It is a balloon-like structure which is like highly vascularized. What is the meaning of something being highly vascularized? Hmm? Highly vascularized is when anything is very richly supplied with blood vessels. It has a lot of blood vessels. Okay, so like as soon as the gases would be present in the alveoli, they can easily diffuse into the bloodstream. So that is why. Now we have two lungs that are present in the thoracic chamber, and they are covered by a double layered structure which is called as the pleura. So the covering or the layer that surrounds the lungs is called as the pleura. So for example, there is outer pleura and inner pleura. And in between them, there is pleural fluid present. Why is this present? So as to reduce the friction. Okay. You people might have, learned about friction also. Class 11, I think. No, not yet. So, talking about this, so the pleura, it is the layer which surrounds the lungs, and in between the pleural membranes or the pleural layers, there is the presence of pleural fluid. Now, what this pleural fluid does is that it reduces friction on the lung surface, so that the lungs, like it can, smoothly do the process of expanding and then going back to its normal state. Now remember, the outer pleural membrane, see if you see in this diagram, the yellow portion, right? This one here is the outer membrane and this one is the inner pleural membrane, right? And the yellow colored thing in the middle is the fluid, pleural fluid. So I am saying that the outer pleural membrane, this is in close contact with the ribs, isn't it? Because it will be like here, you see here, it is in close contact with the rib part. And the inner part or the inner pleural membrane is in close contact with the lungs, right? So the outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thoracic lining, whereas the inner pleural membrane is in close contact with the lung surface. Now see, the part where we start from the external nostrils up until the bronchioles, meaning up until before the alveoli part. That part is the conducting part, meaning it will direct the air inside. Okay, it will just take the air, like conducting it towards the inside. So, starting from the external nostrils up until the terminal bronchioles, that constitutes the conducting part, whereas the alveoli and their ducts form the exchange part, meaning this is where the exchange of gases take place. So, if anyone would ask you, what is the site of exchange of gases? So it will be the alveoli. Alveoli is where the site of exchange of gases is. It's where the gaseous exchange takes place. Clear?
Yeah.
Now the conducting part, what it does is that it transports the atmospheric air to the alveoli. First thing, the most important thing, obviously. Then it clears it from foreign particles, so sort of filters the air, it humidifies the air and also brings it to our body temperature. This is the function of the conducting part of our respiratory system. So starting from the nostrils up until the bronchioles part is our conducting system. Conducting, you understand? Like from one part it will go to next, from next to next to next, just like that. Nothing else is happening. But when we talk about the alveolar part, that is where the exact, like the oxygen will get into the blood, the carbon dioxide will get out of the blood. Okay. So exchange part is the site of actual diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and the atmospheric air. So up until now, is everything clear, students? Also see, right now I am using the NCERT PDF because I have to freshly make the notes for this chapter. Okay, I don't have it written, so I haven't had the time to write it. So you just bear with me. I will like, even if I complete the chapter with this NCERT PDF, I will share the notes. Okay?
So all of this is happening in the nostrils only.
Which part?
Like all the points that you marked.
Nostril? No, no, no. Nostril is just here.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
it.
the nasal cavity.
No, no, no. See, nostrils, nasal cavity, nasal chamber, then pharynx, trachea, bronchi, primary and secondary like bronchioles, and lastly, all the tiny bronchioles, right? Till here, this is the conducting part, meaning the air will move from the nostrils to the nasal chamber to the trachea, like that. But there is no exchange happening, nothing, just the air is just moving. And in the meantime, with the air, like the air is getting cleared from the dirty stuff, the foreign particles, right? And then the air is getting purified, it is getting, to the normal body temperature. That's like all of these things are happening. Now once the air travels the whole entire conducting pathway and it reaches the alveoli, then the exchange of gases will happen. From the alveoli, the oxygen will move into the blood. And from the blood, the CO2 will go into the alveoli, like that. So this, what is happening? Diffusion is happening. And do you people remember the definition of diffusion? What is the definition of diffusion?
Going from higher
Like
concentration to
stuff.
lower.
It's the movement of substances from a region of its higher concentration to the lower concentration, right? Just like how we know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Everyone knows this. Even the person who has left science and is doing something else, that person also knows it. Same way, diffusion also is a very basic thing. It's like the gases mostly, they diffuse out. So they pass through the membrane and go into the blood. So that is what happens. So exchange part and conducting part are clear to you both?
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now the lungs, they are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is anatomically an airtight chamber. Anatomically means in terms of its structure. In terms of its internal structure, it is airtight chamber. Thoracic chamber is formed. Now let us see the whole entire thoracic chamber, which contains the lungs, which contains the ribs and all. So how is it formed? Now the thoracic chamber is formed dorsally by the vertebral column. So if we start from the back, our thoracic chamber has the vertebral column present. Ventrally, meaning in the front, there is this one big bone in the middle of the chest called as sternum. And laterally, like in the sideways, we have the ribs, right? So at the back side, there is the vertebral column. In the front side, there is the sternum. And then there are ribs surrounding it in the sideways. So this is how the thoracic chamber is made. It is made from the back, from the front, and from the sides, like all the surfaces. And how the back side, like the dorsal surface, has the vertebral column, which we call as a backbone. The ventral surface, meaning the front side, has the sternum, which is like a flat bone present, and the lateral surface, right, that is like made by the ribs. Clear, students?
Yeah.
Now, for example, if I draw a like
Where
lungs
exactly
like
is the sternum present?
right in the middle of the chest,
By the heart?
like exactly in the middle, right in the middle of the chest, there is this broad, flat bone that is called as a sternum. Sternum is the name of a bone. Okay, like when you do this, the sound that comes, it's because your hand is going on the sternum. Okay, so that is like a flat bone right in the middle of the body. And laterally, the ribs are present. You can feel your ribs also, right? Now, below the lungs, okay, on the lower side of the lung, there is this dome shape, sort of like a semicircular shaped muscle, which we call as diaphragm. This diaphragm is very important for breathing. Okay. Now, have you people studied the pressure volume relationship in chemistry?
No.
No. Okay. See, our whole entire breathing, or you can say our whole entire exchange of gas, it is based on the principle of pressure and volume and their relationship, meaning how they are connected to each other. For example, pressure is inversely proportional to volume. Do you people know what is the meaning of inverse proportionality?
Yeah.
What is it?
If like one of things increases, then the other thing reduces.
Exactly. And here, if the pressure will increase, the volume will decrease. And if the volume will increase, the pressure will decrease. So our whole entire breathing mechanism, it is based on this. Okay, if someone would say, what is the mechanism that runs our breathing system? So you'd say pressure volume relationship. The relationship between the pressure and volume tells us that the pressure is inversely proportional to the volume. Okay, now wait, I'll show you one thing, students. I was preparing your notes only. I'll show you. It's going to be very, like nice and pretty, and you people
Will the
will
volume
enjoy
be in the lungs or the pressure will be in the lung?
both. See this. So I was like designing a very nice notes for you. So it's not yet completed. I have just begun like, doing it all. So the cellular respiration and all the things I'm done till only, earthworms only. So that is why it's incomplete. So I am using the NCERT PDF. Okay. But once it gets completed, then I'll share it. You people will enjoy studying. So, all right. Coming back to here, the whole entire process of breathing, you people, like, see, I'll say everything 2 times so that you people can understand the importance of the thing. Okay, it's very, very important that the pressure and the volume, their connectivity together, is the whole entire thing that runs the breathing process. Now, anatomical setup of lungs in the thorax is such that any change in the volume of the thoracic cavity will reflect in the lung cavity, meaning thorax means the chest area. For example, if the chest, like when we breathe in, the chest, like our chest lifts up when we breathe in, and so does the lung. The lungs also expand. So whatever is happening to the chest cavity, the same exact thing will happen to the lung cavity. Anything that is related to the lungs is pulmonary. Okay, pulmonary. Like anything that is related to the heart is cardiac, isn't it? Same. So now, such an arrangement is essential for breathing as we cannot directly alter the pulmonary volume. Like the volume of air that is there in our lungs, we cannot do anything to change it. So our anatomy, meaning our body structure, is made in such a way that it does it for us. Clear? Any doubts up until now? Always remember the thoracic cavity and the pulmonary cavity, they go hand in hand. Whatever will happen to the thoracic cavity, the pulmonary cavity is also going to take that.
Ma'am,
Like
is
when we
there a
breathe.
specific pulmonary volume in our body?
There are specific volumes. You will be studying it. There are different volumes and their combinations also. So when the thoracic cavity increases, the pulmonary cavity will also increase. Clear? This much is clear?
Yeah.
Now, let us see the steps of respiration. First, breathing. This breathing, like the basic, we take in oxygen, we give out carbon dioxide. This breathing, in a very fancy term, it is called as pulmonary ventilation. In this process, the atmospheric air is drawn in and the CO2 rich alveolar air is released out. So this is breathing. That's it. Like one process breathing, fancy name for breathing is pulmonary ventilation. So during this process, we take in the oxygen, we give out the carbon dioxide, and that is it. But the things that we don't know actually is that once those gases are there in our body, like for example, it reaches the alveoli, then the diffusion of them takes place. So the diffusion of the oxygen, the diffusion of the CO2 across the membrane of the alveoli, that happens. These all steps we will study in depth. Right now it's just a superficial thing. So breathing or pulmonary ventilation is when the atmospheric is like an atmospheric air is taken in and CO2 rich air is given out. Now these gases in our body, they get diffused through the alveoli membrane. Now once, like after, like for example, this is the alveoli and here is the blood. Here is the gas. So the gas, oxygen or carbon dioxide, like oxygen comes into the alveoli. From the alveoli, it gets diffused into the blood. And then you know that our blood is circulating everywhere in our body. So the blood carries oxygen everywhere, like that. It's like a, like a pipeline system everywhere. So the transportation of gases by the blood, and then the oxygen and carbon dioxide, it gets diffused between the blood and the tissues wherever it is required. Utilization of oxygen. Now this one, it is a different chapter. It's not in this chapter. When we break down biomolecules with the help of oxygen and we release energy, that is respiration, cellular respiration.
What's catabolic?
See, catabolic means any reaction which involves the breakdown of something. Bigger molecules broken down into smaller molecules, and it is accompanied by the release of a lot of energy. You people might have learned exothermic, endothermic.
Yeah.
So exothermic reactions are catabolic reactions. The one which is accompanied by the release of a lot of energy. Clear? This part is not there in this chapter. It will be there in a different chapter, chapter number 12, that is respiration in plants. Up until now, we have seen.
Emulsification of fats is also catabolic.
Yeah. No. That is a different. It's like the breakdown of fat molecules. It's like bigger chunks broken down into smaller chunks. But here it is a chemical reaction instead of being a physical reaction. Okay, these are chemical reactions that are accompanied by the release of a lot of energy. Okay. Now let us see the mechanism of breathing. Now breathing in, like we breathe in, we breathe out. Breathing in is called as inspiration. Breathing out is called as expiration. So when we take the atmospheric in, we say that we are inspiring, that is inspiration. And when we are releasing out the CO2 rich air to, like from the alveoli, we call it expiration. We are expiring, right? Releasing the air out. Now comes the main part, that is actually the part where you people have to pay very big attention. See, the movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating a pressure gradient. First of all, can anyone tell me what is the meaning of gradient? Gradient. What is gradient? What do you understand by the word gradient? Nothing. You don't understand anything.
No, it's my first time hearing it.
First time hearing it. Okay. See, remember how when I talked to you about diffusion, I talked about something high to low?
Yeah,
Like high concentration, low concentration, right? That though you people know. Now see, anything if, like, let's just say if there is something that is present at a higher concentration in one area and at a lower concentration in another area. Okay, so high concentration, low concentration. So this difference of concentration is called as a gradient. Difference of concentration. Now, it could be the concentration of pressure. It could be the concentration of volume. I'll go slowly. If there is higher concentration of anything, high concentration of pressure, high concentration of volume, and then there is the low concentration of something. There is high, there is low. So this
so the
difference,
difference is called gradient.
yeah, the difference is the gradient. Okay. And according to this difference only, the things are going to be performed. Now, let us see. Inspiration. And this pressure gradient is in between the lungs and the atmosphere. So at one point, anything could be high concentrated in the atmosphere, or it could be at high concentration inside the lungs. And that will drive out the whole entire process. Okay. Now let us see how. Inspiration, that is breathing in, can occur if the pressure within the lungs, meaning the intrapulmonary pressure. Pressure within means intra. Inter means in between. Okay, so intra means within. So pulmonary refers to the lungs. So the pressure in the lungs when it is less than the pressure in the atmosphere. Meaning, if the atmosphere have higher concentration of gas and the lungs, they have lower concentration of gas. So there is this gradient, pressure gradient. And can you tell me from where to where does the gas move? From low
Higher
to high?
concentration, lower.
So from high to low, right? So it means that the gases that are present at higher concentration in the atmosphere, they will diffuse into the lungs. Now, how this whole entire thing happens? For example, see, I'll tell you the basic first, then we'll go with the muscles. Like you place your hand on your chest and you breathe in. Place the hand on your chest and you breathe in. When you breathe in, what do you feel? You feel like your chest cavity is going up, isn't it? Not this much,
Yeah.
but it goes up, right? And like I said, if something happens to the chest cavity, what will happen to the lungs cavity? Same or different?
Same.
Same, exactly the same. So if I say that when we breathe in and our chest cavity or our thoracic cavity is increasing, so the lung cavity is also increasing, the lungs are also expanding.
Yeah.
So when we breathe in, the volume of the chest cavity increases. And the volume of the pulmonary cavity increases or decreases?
Increases.
Increases. You people understand? Now we are going to use fancy words. We'll not say lung cavity. We'll say pulmonary cavity. Okay. So if you people go and talk to someone, you're like, oh, I have pulmonary in my body. They're like, what? Like, yeah, you people won't know. We know it. So once we are breathing in, the chest cavity, meaning the thoracic cavity, the volume of the thoracic cavity is increasing. The volume of the pulmonary cavity is also increasing. Now tell me one thing, students. If the volume is increasing, what will happen to the pressure?
Pressure will decrease.
Yes, because of the inverse proportionality, the pressure inside the lungs will decrease. Now, compared to the pressure inside the lungs, the pressure of gases outside the lungs, meaning in the atmosphere, is more. So as a result, we know that the gases, they move from high concentration to low. So because now the gases in the atmosphere, they will be transported into the lungs. And this is breathing in. Like I have explained this in a very simple manner. Okay. Now see, let us see how that happens. So inspiration, that is breathing in, it can occur if the pressure within the lungs, that is intrapulmonary pressure if it is less than the atmospheric pressure. Then only from high to low diffusion is going to happen. Meaning that there is a negative pressure in the lungs with respect to the atmospheric pressure. Negative pressure means atmosphere has more pressure, the lungs has less. Similarly, expiration, that is the breathing out, it will take place when the intrapulmonary pressure is high. Now it will be the exact opposite. Now when we breathe out, you place your hand on your chest. When you breathe out, the chest cavity goes back to its normal state, right? It goes back. If the chest cavity volume is decreasing, so the lung volume will also decrease, meaning the pulmonary volume will decrease, but the pressure will increase. And now the pressure in the lungs is more as compared to the pressure in the atmosphere. So now the foul gas, that is the CO2, will diffuse out of the body into the atmosphere. Clear? So you see how pressure volume relationship is the principle of our breathing, and it's so important, right? Now, so for this whole entire inspiration and expiration process, we have muscles. Like our ribs, they can go up and go down. It's because of the special set of muscles that we have. So first there is the diaphragm, the dome-shaped muscle that I showed you. Apart from that, there is a set of muscles called as external and internal intercostal muscle. These intercostal muscles, they are present in between the ribs. And
Now
this
what's
whole
intercostals?
inter means in between, costal refers to the ribs. So those muscles that are present in between the ribs, they are called as the intercostal muscles. They can be externally or internally present. Okay. And the diaphragm, along with the external and the internal intercostal muscles, they help to create the gradient that we just talked about. The pressure gradient, the volume gradient. Okay. Gradient again means a difference in the concentration.
Ma'am, inspiration and expiration is it the same term for inhalation and exhalation?
Yes. Exactly the same. So the difference in the concentration is called as the gradient. Now, inspiration. Now see, when we breathe in, we saw that the volume of the thoracic cavity was increasing, and so was the volume of our pulmonary cavity. But when we breathe in, the diaphragm, which was dome shaped like this, it goes flat. It becomes flat, as a result of which the ribs go out, the lungs also expand. So inspiration is initiated by the contraction of diaphragm. So for our inspiration, meaning for our breathing in, the diaphragm flattens, because of which the volume of the thoracic chamber increases in the antero-posterior axis. Antero-posterior means like towards the front side. Anteriorly, it increases like in the front. Okay. The contraction of the external intercostal muscles, they lift up the ribs. So our ribs, they are lifting up. It's because our intercostal muscles, meaning the muscles in between our ribs, they are helping the ribs to get lifted up. And then what happens? Like the sternum also lifts up, which is the flat bone right in the middle of our body. This causes an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. Dorsoventral axis, the volume of the thorax. Dorsoventral means in terms of like back and front, like the volume is increasing, right, towards the frontal side. The overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in the pulmonary volume, because we now have established the fact that whatever will happen to the thoracic cavity, the same will happen to the pulmonary cavity. But since the volume of the pulmonary cavity is first of all, the volume is increasing. I don't know why there's written. Okay, see, the increase in the pulmonary volume decreases the intrapulmonary pressure, right? Volume increases, the pressure decreases. And now the pressure becomes less than the atmospheric pressure, because of which the air is forced from the outside to move into the lung, and thereby inspiration is completed. So we have seen up until now that during the process of inspiration, the first thing that happens is the diaphragm contracts and it sort of flattens. From a dome shape, it goes to flat shape. The external intercostal muscles that are present in our ribs, they lift up the sternum, which is the flat bone right in the middle of the body, and it also increases the thoracic cavity volume by lifting up the ribs. Okay, students? Any doubts?
No, mom. Mom, can you explain the axis again? Like what it does?
It's like, no, it does nothing. But it's like it's showing that it is increasing in that direction. Like how you have X plane, Y plane, Z plane. Same way, these axis tells you in which direction is our chest cavity going. Obviously, when we breathe in, the chest cavity increases. It doesn't increases on the back. Our lungs don't go back, like out of our back. No, it goes in front.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that is what they are explaining.
So it just shows that it's going in front or back. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Now see this thing. You people were wondering about sternum. So see, right in the middle, do you see this bone? This long triangular bone.
Yeah.
And do you see how the ribs, they are attached to this bone in front?
Yeah.
So it
That
joins
is,
the rib.
yeah, that is why we are saying that the thoracic chamber, ventrally it is made by the sternum. Dorsally we have the vertebral column. Dorsal means backside. And laterally, the sideways, we have the ribs. This is the anatomical setup. Clear?
Yeah.
So this sternum also, it lifts up while we are breathing in. Now, let's talk about breathing out. So during the breathing out process, the diaphragm, since it was contracted, now it will relax. The intercostal muscles, it will return the diaphragm and the sternum to their normal position. To their normal position. And then the thoracic volume will, you can say, reduce or decrease. The pulmonary volume will also reduce or decrease. But since the volume is reducing, the pressure is increasing. And as a result of which, the pressure is high in the lungs and low in the atmosphere. So now the expulsion of air from the lungs to the atmosphere takes place and we call it as expiration. Yeah. So you people only tell me now what happens during breathing in. Firstly, what happens?
Like the air gets, the particle gets removed, humidified and everything, and then it goes to the lungs. Like when you breathe in the air.
No, I'm not asking about the conduction. I'm asking about the inspiration, like how inspiration happens. Tell me that. Whatever you've understood about.
The diaphragm, it like gets contracted and the volume it increases. And
The thoracic volume and the pulmonary volume increases and the diaphragm contracts.
Firstly, the diaphragm
they
contracts. Okay, firstly, what happens? The whole entire process is happening because the diaphragm was contracting. So since the diaphragm was contracting, it became flat. The intercostal muscles, they are now causing the ribs and the sternum to expand. As a result of which the volume increases, the volume of the thoracic cavity, the volume of the pulmonary cavity, both of them increases and the pressure decreases. Now, since the pressure, this is how you will write in exam. Now, since the pressure in the atmosphere is more than that in the lungs, so the air diffuses from the high concentration to the low concentration. Clear?
Yeah.
Now, like for example, if I ask you people to breathe in and hold your breath, You will be able to do so for a little time period, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if I ask you to like breathe in and then forcefully breathe out for a long period of time, like normally we breathe in, we breathe out, and that's it. But if I say take a deep breath in and then release it slowly, slowly, and keep on releasing it, that also you can do, isn't it? So see, as humans, we have this great strength, we have this great ability to alter the way we breathe in and we breathe out. Or we can alter it. Okay. Now see, we have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration. Like if I ask you to breathe, like taking a deep breath, you can do so. Right? That's not how our body breathes normally, but we can do so.
Other animals
And
cannot do that.
hmm,
Can other animals not do that?
no. Have you ever seen a dog taking a deep breath? They don't have that mechanism like ours. And they don't even need to do meditation. We only need to do meditation. So it's like we can increase the duration of inspiration. We can increase the strength of it with the help of additional muscles that are present in the abdomen, meaning in our stomach muscles. Okay, like you people only see if you take a deep breath in, right? The stomach goes in, the stomach goes flat.
But,
Hmm.
mom, a dog can swim, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it can go in. That means that it can hold its breath.
It can hold its breath. Obviously, it can hold its breath. But see, since we are studying human respiratory system now, so we are going to see how we can alter the volume and the air that we breathe. Dogs, maybe they can do all like the alteration process. I have no idea about that. But yeah, that is a good point that they do swim. And since they swim, so they may hold their breath also. But they don't need to like breathe in and breathe out like deeply. Okay. So basically, what happens is that when you breathe in, if you feel like, for example, if I ask you to take a deep breath in, you would feel like your stomach is sort of crunching towards the inside. It's like sort of contracting like that. And then you feel it on your abdominal muscles. So those abdominal muscles, it helps in the inspiration and expiration, like breathing in and breathing out. So on an average, the healthy human being breathes 12 to 16 times per minute, meaning 12 times, just like breathing in and breathing out, that is 12 to 16 times per minute. Now the volume of air involved in breathing, it can be estimated by using a device called a spirometer. Like how much volume of air you're breathing in and how much volume of air you're breathing out, that can be monitored. Okay. And with that being said, we come on to the next topic, that is respiratory volume and capacities. See, volume in terms of air, like how much air do we breathe in, how much air do we breathe in at a particular time, like that. So let us see, the first one is tidal volume. So it is the volume of air inspired or expired during normal respiration, meaning when you're normally breathing in and breathing out, the volume of air that you take in and breathe out is 500 milliliters. 500 milliliters of air is what you breathe in and breathe out. Meaning a healthy man can inspire or expire approximately 6,000 to 8,000 milliliter of air per minute. How did we find it out? We multiplied 500 to 12. That was the per minute breathing rate. Right? 12. If you multiply it with 16, you have the range. Clear?
Ma'am, are we supposed to learn the numbers that are there in the reader?
Yes, it's fixed. You have to learn this. Like you cannot, write it on your own. It's fixed. This is a data. It's a factual data. So you have to learn this. Okay. See, these ones you don't have to learn because you have to multiply 500 into 12 and 16. So you can do that then and there also. But this 500 is there. Now the rest of you, like the rest of the volumes, you have to learn. There's no other option. Okay, you have to learn. Even I learned it by crying. Okay. So tidal volume is the volume of air that you breathe in and you breathe out. Normal. When you are just normally breathing, sitting, breathing in, that's it. Then comes Second kind of volume, that is inspiratory reserve volume, IRV. This is when you take a forcible inspiration, meaning when you take a deep breath in. So how much air can you take in while you are doing a forced inspiration? So that is around 2,500 to 3,000 milliliters of air. Okay. Same thing when you are forcefully breathing out. So the amount of air that you can breathe out forcefully is expiratory reserve volume. That is 1,000 to 1,100 milliliters. Clear?
So 1 liter.
Yes. So that is like in the case of forceful. Normal is just 500. Multiply it by the breathing rate. You have that per minute data. Then comes the residual volume. Now imagine if we are breathing out and there will be no air left in the lungs. What will happen to the lungs?
It will collapse.
Yeah, it will collapse. Right? It will just like how if you take a polythene bag and you just crush it. That's what's going to happen to the lungs if there is no amount of air left remaining in the lungs. So that is why we have to talk about the residual volume. Residual means leftover, right? Leftover. So the residual volume is the volume of air that remains in the lungs even after you have forcefully expired the air. And that is 1,100 to 1,200 milliliters. This much volume of air, despite however much you're breathing in, despite however much you're breathing out, this amount of air will always be there in the lungs. Clear?
Yeah.
So that is the different kinds of the residual volumes. Now, once you remember the residual volumes, you won't be needing to remember anything else. Like these residual volumes, the 4 volumes, not residual, in general, the respiratory volumes that you people have seen up until now, the volumes that you've seen, these are to be remembered. Now, when you make combinations of these volumes, like you take tidal volume, add it with inspiratory reserve, like that. When you make combinations of these volumes, that is called as a capacity, respiratory capacity. So the next thing is respiratory capacity. So by adding a few respiratory volumes that are described above, one can derive various pulmonary capacity. For example, let us find out the inspiratory capacity. So the total amount or the volume of air a person can inspire after normal expiration, meaning once you've normally breathed out and then the next breathe in, like however much amount of volume of air that you can take in will be called as inspiratory capacity. It will be a combination of tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume. This, like what the combinations you have to remember. So the TV, that is tidal volume, and IRV, that is inspiratory volume, is equal to inspiratory capacity. This is the amount of air that you're going to breathe in after you've normally breathed out. Second comes the expiratory capacity, meaning the volume of air that a person can expire after normal inspiration, like normal breathing in, the amount of air that you can normally breathe out. So that will be tidal volume plus the ERV, that is expiratory reserve volume. Clear?
Yeah.
Now, moving forward, there is the functional residual capacity, meaning the volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. Like this amount of air will stay there in the lungs. What is it? It is
But isn't the
ERV.
residual capacity and functional residual capacity the same thing?
It is the same thing, but like residual volume is the volume of air that remains in the lung, right? Despite anything. But functional residual capacity, it's like a combination of air that we are going to see. So it's like when you breathe, like the volume of air that will be remaining in the lungs when you do a normal expiration. That will be the ERV plus the residual volume. Then comes the vital capacity. The maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration. Meaning when you forcefully breathe out, and then the maximum amount of air that you can breathe in. So this would be ERV, tidal volume, and the IR together. Okay? ERV, TV, and IR. Any doubts?
I'm
No
gonna
doubt.
explain again.
See, vital capacity is when, like, say, it's like nothing that, it's like something, it's there. Like, without any particular explanation, it's just there. Like, for example, if you have breathed out, like very forcefully, then however much volume of air that you can take in after you breathe out forcefully, that is called as the vital capacity. That will include the amount of volume that you've breathed out forcefully. It will include the amount of volume that stays in your lungs always, and it will include the inspiratory reserve volume, like the volume of air that you are capable of taking in.
What about the tidal volume?
Tidal volume is going to stay there anyway. Tidal volume is this thing, the volume of air that is like always there only.
But then why does it have expiration? Won't it like go away?
Which thing goes away?
Expiration.
Expiration.
Like the
What?
ERV one.
ERV is when you are forcefully expiring. Forcefully.
So you're
Meaning
adding that also.
Why? Because it is like how much air will you breathe in after you're done breathing out forcefully. It's like not normal. It's when you are putting an effort into breathing out, and then after that, how much amount of like air or the volume of air that you can breathe in. That is what they're talking about. So that is why you are adding the expiratory reserve volume, the tidal volume, and the inspiratory reserve.
Okay.
Lastly, there comes the total lung capacity, meaning that even like at the end of forced inspiration, when we take a deep breath in, the volume of air that is there in the lungs that can be fit into the lungs would be the total lung capacity. It would contain residual volume, ERV, TV, and IRV. It's like a combination of all. Or you can call it as the vital capacity plus residual volume, because ERV, TV, and IRV is vital capacity. So if you take the vital capacity and add it with the residual volume, you get the total lung capacity. It's a combination, they're playing combinations. So the capacity is clear?
Yeah.
Any doubts anywhere, Aisha? Clear?
Yeah, ma'am.
After that, now we'll move on to the exchange of gases, meaning the whole entire pathway as to how it is going to happen. Now, if you people remember life processes chapter, you know that the breathing, meaning the exchange of gases, and the circulation of blood, they are like going hand in hand every. Isn't it? It's very closely associated, because ultimately the blood carries oxygen and carbon dioxide, and oxygen and carbon dioxide, these are the gases that we breathe in. Now let us see how the exchange of gases actually takes place. So alveoli is the place where the exchange of gases would take place, and it occurs between the blood and the tissue. Tissue means all the different parts of our body. The oxygen and the carbon dioxide, they are exchanged in the sites by simple diffusion, mainly based on the pressure or the concentration gradient. We know now. But what are the things that can affect this diffusion? First of all, solubility of the gas. If the gas is insoluble, then it cannot diffuse. The gas has to be soluble. Then only it can pass through the membrane. Na? If anything that is insoluble, it will not pass through the membrane. So the gas,
Which
the
membrane?
alveoli membrane, the membrane of the alveoli.
Oh,
Getting my point? Like, see, you people have to visualize this. Like in the balloon-like structure, imagine the balloon-like structure to be thin as a paper. Okay? And when the oxygen came over here, now oxygen is a gas and alveoli is a, it's like an organ, it's like a part, right? And so it has a membrane surrounding it, which is basically the plasma membrane or any membrane. It has a wall. So this oxygen, it has to move through it to be supplied to the blood. So since it is moving through it, it has to pass from there. Get my point? It has to pass through that. So in order to pass through it, it has to mix with it. Isn't it? Then only it will pass, because here no teleportation is happening. Right? It has
what
to
if it
pass.
can't mix?
If it can't mix, then it can't go into the blood. And
So
we'll
it'll
die.
come out.
No, we'll die. Because we'll not have oxygen in our body. And then the organs will start to fail. So the solubility of a gas is very, very important. Now, if I am saying that the gas has to mix with the membrane, if the membrane is too thick, then also it's going to fail. Like the gas is mixing, but it got mixed and lost in the membrane itself because the membrane was too thick. So that is why the thickness of the alveolar membrane is so, it's like a paper, that thin, very, very thin. So the solubility affects the diffusion, the thickness of the membrane affects the diffusion, and this has to be kept in mind that the gas must be soluble and the membrane must be thin. It shouldn't be very, very thick. Clear?
Yeah.
Any doubts up until now? No doubts?
No.
All right. Very good. Now, 1 second, students. So see, now what happens? The pressure that is contributed by an individual gas. Okay, you people, have you studied about partial pressure yet? See, for example, there is this vessel. Okay, there is this vessel. It has O2, it has CO2, it has different gases. Okay, and you know that each of the gas, they have their pressure, right? They can exert a said amount of pressure. So in a mixture of gas, the pressure exerted by one gas will be considered as partial pressure, because it is a mixture of gases. Getting my point? If I'm saying that there is like a mixture of gas in any vessel or anything, and every single gas has some sort of pressure to apply, but as collective, it will be one kind of pressure exerted by all of them. But if you talk about their individual pressures, it will not be the pressure of the whole entire container. Rather, it will be their own pressure, which we call as partial pressure. Getting my point?
Oh, the pressure of the single compound.
The pressure of one gas in a mixture of gas is partial.
Okay.
Okay. So the pressure that is contributed by individual gas in a mixture of gases is called as the partial pressure. And if it is about oxygen, we write PO2, small p O2. If it is carbon dioxide, we write small p CO. Okay. Now, partial pressure of these two gases in the atmospheric air and the two sites of diffusion. Now, this is given in the table. Now, see. This table, the respiratory gas, the first one is oxygen, the second one is carbon dioxide. We have seen the different areas. Atmospheric air, meaning the atmosphere. Then we have the exchange part, that is the alveoli. We have the blood that is impure, dirty blood, deoxygenated blood, meaning CO2 rich blood. And then the blood that is pure O2 rich blood, and then in the tissue. So we are going to see how much pressure or partial pressure do these gases have in all of these areas. For example, if we talk about the atmospheric air, it is 159 mmHg. mmHg is millimeters of mercury. This is the unit of partial pressure. So 159 mmHg is the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. And we know that in the alveoli it is less. So the gas moves from the atmosphere to the lungs, right? Alveoli. Now, what happens is that the blood that is carrying the oxygen, it has 95 partial pressure of gas. And the blood and the tissues, it has 40, right? So the oxygenated gases, meaning the oxygen will move from the blood into the tissues. And then the deoxygenated part will move on to go back into the alveoli to go into the atmosphere. It's like they are talking about the different partial
Can
pressures.
explain the table again?
Hmm.
Like what happens?
First of all, you people have understood the meaning of partial pressure?
Yeah.
Now they are showing us the partial pressure of different areas. Okay, partial pressure, like in general, what are the partial pressures? So if the partial pressure, we're talking about oxygen, so in the atmospheric air, it will be the highest because it's the reservoir. In the alveoli, it will be less than the atmosphere so that the atmospheric O2 can come in to the alveoli. Now in the tissues where the oxygen is needed, it will be less, it will be 40, and the oxygenated blood will have more so that it can give the oxygen to the tissues. So it will have more. And the deoxygenated blood, it will have less amount of the oxygen partial pressure. Clear? So this is like, they are just, it's like no connection in between them. It's just that they are stating that this area has this much partial pressure as comparison to the other area.
So the O2 and the CO2 in the deoxygenated blood is almost the same. There's not much difference, only 5, right?
Where?
In the
Yes.
deoxygenated blood.
And same way, they have given the partial pressures of each of the CO2 at different locations. So if you don't want to, relate it or do not want to connect it, it's okay. You just should know that there are different partial pressures of the gases at different areas.
And do we need to memorize this?
No. Now see. Do you people remember double circulation?
Yeah.
Quickly revise. Tell me, what is double circulation? Like the mechanism.
When the blood passes through the heart twice, once in the oxygenated and the other in the deoxygenated form.
How?
The blood enters to the vena cava and then it goes to the left ventricle first. Sorry, atria. To the atria, and then from the atria it goes to the ventricle, and then the ventricle through the pulmonary artery it goes to the lungs and gets oxidized. Then from there from the pulmonary vein it comes to the again to the different atria. I think the right atria, and then from the right ventricle, and then from there it passes through the rest of the body.
No. See. The right side of the heart is for the dirty blood. Okay. The left side is for the pure blood. So now, I always start at the body tissues, right? The body cells or the tissues, they utilize they utilize the oxygen and they give out the carbon dioxide. Now this carbon dioxide, it gets diffused into the blood. Now the carbon dioxide rich blood is called as deoxygenated blood, and the vena cava carries the deoxygenated blood to the right auricle. From the right auricle, it goes into the right ventricle, and then when the right ventricle pumps it out, With the help of the pulmonary artery, it is carried to the lungs so that oxygenation could happen. Oxygenation is when the CO2 is taken out and the O2 is given in. Now the O2 rich air will be coming by the pulmonary vein into the left auricle, and then from the left auricle it will go into the left ventricle, and then it will be carried by the systemic arteries or the aorta to be distributed to the whole entire body cell. That is your basic double circulation, isn't it? Now, this double circulation aids in the process of the delivery of the different gases at different locations. Clear? This much is clear? Now, tell me one thing, students. Is there any notes that you people have to take down, like from the previous chapters? Like the biological classification and stuff?
Mom, I got it sent.
You got it?
Yeah, I got it. She sent it.
The notes were sent to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So up until now, you people have understood the things that I've taught. Are there any doubts? Anything you want to ask me? Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Now moving forward, we will talk about how the whole entire exchange of gases is actually happening. So when we talk about the exchange of gases, so basically it is the process, and it is very closely connected with the double circulation. Now, how does it happen and where does it happen? See. So the data that is given in the table, it clearly indicates a concentration gradient for oxygen from alveoli to blood and from blood to tissues. Because of the gradient only, the gases are moving here and there. So similarly, a gradient is present for CO2 in the opposite direction, meaning from the tissues to the blood, right? Because from the tissues, the CO2 will be transported to the blood, and then in the blood, it will be transported to the heart, right? So remember that CO2, it is actually more soluble as compared to the O2. Like if you compare their solubility, the CO2 is more soluble. Like how much? It is 20 to 25 times more soluble than the this thing, oxygen. Okay, so the amount of CO2 that can diffuse through the diffusion membrane per unit difference in partial pressure is much higher as compared to the O2. The CO2 can diffuse much higher as compared to the O2. Clear?
Yeah.
One second. So when we talk about, remember, I told you the solubility of the gas and the thickness of the membrane. It is very important to alter the diffusion process. So now we'll be talking about the diffusion membrane. So in this picture that you see over here, this is the picture of the diffusion membrane. See this bulbous structure, this part is the alveoli, right? And now we have to see what are the different parts that are associated. So the diffusion membrane is made up of three major layers. That is thin squamous epithelium of the alveoli. So epithelium of the alveoli, meaning the layer of the alveoli. Then the endothelium of the alveolar capillaries, meaning the layer of the capillary. And then the basement membrane, like in between them, there will be like a cementing thing that will join them together. It's like a sandwich. Okay. So despite of having these three layers, okay, the epithelium of the alveoli, endothelium of the blood capillary, and in between them the basement membrane. Despite of all of that, the total thickness of this membrane is less than a millimeter. Imagine how thin it is. It's less than a millimeter, right? You remember your scale has centimeter linings? It's
Yeah.
even less than that. Imagine how thin it is. And so in our body, there are all the factors which will favor for the diffusion to take place. Like it's like all in the favor of diffusion. Like our body is made that way. Yeah. Now, the transportation of gases. So blood is the medium that will be transporting the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. Now, about 97% of oxygen is transported by the RBCs in the blood. 97% of oxygen, it is transported by RBC. Why RBC?
Because they have hemoglobin, which attracts the oxygen.
Yes. Not attracts, it is the carrier of oxygen, right? It carries the oxygen to wherever it is needed. So that is why like 97% of the oxygen will be transported by the RBC. The
And what about
remaining 3,
3%?
the remaining 3% is carried through the plasma, the fluid of the blood, not the red, like the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is written as HB, not the hemoglobin, but the plasma. Okay, so that is for oxygen. 97, the majority percentage gets transported by RBC, and the remaining 3% is carried by the plasma. But talking about the CO2, 20 to 25% of CO2 is transported by RBC, meaning the hemoglobin. 70% of it is carried in the form of bicarbonate ion, HCO3 minus, this ion, because it has CO2 in it, isn't it? So 70% like bicarbonate ion and 7% is carried in a dissolved state through plasma. Okay. So this is how the gases, they are like they have different mediums to be carried in. Okay. Okay, now wait. So this much is clear. Any doubts up until now? Anything you
And we have
people
to
want to?
memorize the 70% and all that, right?
This part is important. Yes, this is very very important, and this is easy to remember also. In oxygen, majority gets transported by the RBC, and only 3% gets transported by the plasma. In CO2, 20 to 25% gets transported by RBC, 70% gets transported like bicarbonate, and only 7% gets transported in the form in the dissolved state to plasma. Okay. Yeah. So for as far as teaching is concerned, I will keep it till here. Now, you people have understood everything up until now?
Yeah.
Okay, now you people do some questions. This is from the biological classification chapter. So now you can attempt these MCQs in your notebook. Let us see how much you people will be able to do so, how much you won't. And I hope you people are preparing for your Viva.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, now you can do these questions. You can switch off your video, do these questions.
I'm done. I'm done. Done. Done.
Yes, both of you are done, students. Done till here.
Yeah. Ma'am, you didn't show the 11th one.
No, sorry.
I'm done. Ma'am,
Okay, students, let's just keep it till here only. And in the next class, we will continue. Okay.